I'm going to begin with Russ because I don't want to spend too much time on him since we just had a podcast released about basically all things Russell Westbrook on this past week. So go check that out on YouTube or via the podcast feed. But this one's also about the Knicks and then ties into the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. So how about that for natural segue? Let's start here. This was aggregated improperly at certain outlets, but Mark Stein via his Substack reported that there was a source who advised him in Las Vegas to keep an eye on the Knicks and Lakers discussing a potential Westbrook deal if emphasis was his, Leon Rose can successfully bring Donovan Mitchell to Madison Square Garden. The source is thinking, after adding Mitchell, New York would be expected to explore scenarios to trade away Julius Randle. And Randle, just one season removed from his breakthrough All-Star and All-NBA status, is presumably the sort of player the Lakers would have to consider taking on if, again, the emphasis, they are unable to use Westbrook's $47.1 million expiring contract in a trade for Kyrie Irving. This is an interesting setup, and it's one that I've been proposing for a long time on behalf of the Knicks. I've been proposing it in the form of a reboot, even if you don't get Donovan Mitchell. I know you just signed Jalen Brunson. If you can pawn off the 4 years, $117 million left on Randall's deal, he's about to start his extension, 106 of that is guaranteed. For Russ's expiring salary, you do it. You're funneling 40% if the whole thing ends up being guaranteed into one season of Russ. That's fine. He comes off the books. You're not going to be a contender next season anyway, especially if you don't get Donovan Mitchell. That opens up other avenues of flexibility for you moving forward. I think the end game, let's say the Knicks acquire Donovan Mitchell. That can't be it. You need to figure out a way to get another star in there. I'm not someone who's going to say, one, that title contention is the end all be all, or that you even need someone who can be the best player on a contender. I think the aggregate still matters. If you want an equal to Donovan Mitchell or someone who's slightly his superior, having two top 25 players certainly puts you in the title discussion in most instances if you properly flesh out the depth around them. So if you get Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, not that guy. Very good player, not that other top 25 guy. Could RJ Barrett be that guy? I don't know. Just odds-wise, you bet against it because there are only 25 players in the league who would be that top 25 guy. I do really like RJ Barrett. I think his defense is still underrated at this point. He can probably be pretty plug and play on offense, but if you're going to be a top 25 type player, you either need to be one of the best defenders in the league. He does not profile as that, or you need to have a ton of self-creation to your game. I still remain skeptical about his off-the-dribble jumper. He did get to the rim a ton, especially towards the end of last season, right around the new year. The finishing is still spotty. My point is, if you're the Knicks, you want to have as much flexibility as possible to acquire more star talent after getting Mitchell. You're probably going to exhaust a good, if not huge portion of your draft pick and prospect stores with this Donovan Mitchell trade. Can you find someone in free agency? It'll be tough knowing that RJ Barrett, if you keep him in the Mitchell trade, is extension eligible, but Mitchell's on that first rookie extension for the next 3 years. Jalen Brunson is at way below sub max money. You would be able to shoehorn max space in there at some point. Or again, maybe it's a sign and trade scenario where you're just at least creating the flexibility necessary to send out money to bring in someone else. Julius Randle and Evan Fournier to a lesser extent hampers that. I also don't like the idea of Julius Randle playing with Mitchell and Brunson and RJ Barrett if he's still there. He's someone who still is going to need a lot of touches. It doesn't seem like he wants to be someone who is used basically as like a screen and roll type big or pick and pop type big. That may actually be his best role moving forward. So if you're the Knicks, no, you're not giving up a pick to get Westbrook's expiring salary. And I don't think Randall's contract has skewed so far gone that teams won't be willing to acquire it, at least just if you offered it straight up and you were sending out expiring money. He's one season removed from a second-team All-NBA appearance. And if he's even 70% of that player, his contract under the rising cap becomes sort of a bargain. I just don't think the Knicks are set up to make it that way, especially as they seem to be transitioning to, they have Brunson, they have Barrett and Mitchell. They're focusing on these perimeter type cornerstones, and Julius Randle, not super interior, but just sort of this big who's also not the cleanest fit alongside a Mitchell Robinson or a traditional rim runner like a Jericho Sims as well. You're probably going to want to have more floor spacing around him than you currently can. You want to play him next to a floor spacing 5 is my point, because you're not sure if his 3-point shot is going to stick. His step back off the dribble 3, that's certainly doubtful that he'll ever be able to match the 2020-2021 efficiency. Just the point being, your pecking order gets overly crowded. We saw how that can have an adverse impact on some players in New York this season when they had Rose until he was injured and Fournier and Kemba Walker and Julius Randle. That had until later in the season when he was really given the keys to the offense, that hurt RJ Barrett's offensive development. And so this isn't all about RJ now if you're getting Mitchell, but you have Brunson and Mitchell and RJ on offense. To me, Julius Randle becomes superfluous. Do you need a pick if you're the Knicks? That might be another way of, hey, we're taking on Russ's salary. Randle can still be maybe a positive NBA player. He certainly can play the minutes without LeBron and AD. I would argue better than Russ can, just looking at the type of value he provides as someone who's a more efficient off the dribble shooter than Russell Westbrook, or at least more of a threat, or has more upside there. I think you can argue just based off what he did in 2021. So even having him there for that value, we also know the Lakers want to play AD with another big. You could probably argue that Randle might be better off defending certain types of fives that are more stationary. He had a pretty good defensive season in 2021. Also, you do sort of then have two floor spacers up front. If you trust Randle to at least hit the three and you think AD's jumper is going to be better, at the very least, it's one together rather than trying to play him with, Damian Jones, which I don't think we'll see a ton of, but just as an example. They have Thomas Bryant there on a minimum deal. He will chuck threes, so you can play him with Davis. Randle's sort of an extension of that, but brings a lot more ball handling to the equation. And I just think if you really get him to buy into it, when he's at the five with LeBron or another ball handler of the Lakers, maybe it's second units with him and Lonnie Walker the fourth, you can do some damaging stuff with those two. Not the ideal outcome if you're the Lakers and Kyrie's on the table, but if you're not willing to give up 2 firsts, maybe 2 swaps, will you just do Randle for Russ straight up? And there needs to be other money included in there as well. And that's where maybe if you're the Knicks, you could extract additional value out of, because Randle comes in next season at 23.8. So you're probably sending, I guess, Derrick Rose out as part of that deal as well. Now that Taj Gibson's gone, or if it's Cam Reddish too, that really doesn't get you to Russ's money though. So it would have to be basically Evan Fournier and or Derrick Rose attached to Randle for Westbrook. And if you're the Knicks, look, maybe with Rose being an expiring contract as well and someone who can actually help the Lakers, are they giving you their 2027 first? Perhaps it's a way to recoup some draft equity. If I'm the Lakers, the Westbrook fit is so bad, I would absolutely trade a first round pick with Russ in 2027. I would trade one. If I'm the Knicks, I don't need one. But if I'm the Lakers and they're pushing for it, I would trade one for Rose and Randle, or even Fournier, who's a really good fit, but his contract is just sort of blah. And so if you're looking to stay flexible moving forward, getting Randle at a lower price point, and then also just having Rose's deal, he has a team option in 23, 24, come off the books, there's value there. You might just prefer a straight up dump in getting expiring contracts for Russ. And if you're going to do that, you still need to grease the wheels of the equation with a third team. That gets complicated. Just some food for thought there. If I were the Knicks, though, whether you have Donovan Mitchell or not, it doesn't even matter if Donovan Mitchell's there or not. I would trade Randle for Russell Westbrook straight up, just to maximize your flexibility moving forward. And again, I know there have to be other moving pieces there involved. And if you could do something like Fournier and Randle for Westbrook, and then there's no picks involved, let's say the Lakers are just willing to do that. Perhaps they value having 2 players on these. It's a declining contract for Randle, and then Fournier is going to be an $18+ million matching salary chip in this season, and the following one has a team option on the 4th year of his deal. So if they're viewing it like that, if I'm the Knicks, I'm even jumping on that more. It makes you more flexible in advance of 2023. So I don't think you acquire Westbrook with the intention of keeping him either. You waive him or buy him out, and he'll end up somewhere else. If you don't acquire Mitchell, maybe you talk yourself into having Russ there for a season as a draw. I'd still rather have him go elsewhere, just because at that point, if you don't have Mitchell, you still have Brunson, and then I'm all aboard hey, develop RJ Barrett. You still have Quentin Grimes in that scenario. He showed some off the dribble juice in summer league. That's where I'm at with Russ.